Effectiveness in achieving goals. Effectiveness in achieving goals is self-explanatory, but efficiency, achieving goals with the optimal use of resources is another matter. And this is often a point of challenge for government agencies for various reasons. I think there's a delay on the sharing of slides. Okay. I just want to be sure that we can hear me. Can you please confirm if you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can hear you, ma'am.
All right. Okay. All right. So, as a revenue agency, is Ekiti Revenue Service fulfilling the canons of taxation that require that taxes be collected at least cost? We all know that this is a fundamental part of taxation. Is the agency achieving its objective in terms of revenue? In this particular instance, what is the quality of the output of the agency? What are the key things that the agency is doing, and what is the expected output? So the key things for the agency would be enlightenment and engagement of taxpayers, assessment of taxpayers, and collection of revenue. Staff productivity alignment in an institution is always important, and it may involve the restructuring of work processes and roles that can optimize employee output. You know, in an organization at any time, you're looking at the roles of the different employees and their roles as they relate to one another and what their work actually involves. And it's something that changes constantly as the organization evolves. The financial health of an organization is the final output that is evident to all. In this instance, as in any organization, this is what is measured. The final output is what is measured. And we always know that the final output is financial targets determined by staff of the organization. Sorry, just to interject, I think any questions I'll take at the end. I think any questions will be taken at the end. Is that okay? The questions will be taken at the end. The questions will be taken. Okay. So it's always to know that, you know, who are the key stakeholders in matters of taxation. Stakeholder satisfaction is a very important issue in evaluating institutional performance. So we look at it and we say, who are the stakeholders in the Ekiti State IRS? Who are the stakeholders? Of course, the first stakeholders I will put as the good people of Ekiti State who pay the taxes, because if there are no people that are in the working category to pay taxes, there are no taxes to collect. The second lot of stakeholders, I would say, are community leaders and traditional leaders. Those are the corporate organizations that have headquarters or branches within the state, as those are the people that will pay. I say the community and traditional leaders because those are the people that should be key points for enlightenment. They are the ones that can enlighten people in their communities of the importance of paying tax. A lot is said of the informal sector and the lowest income people who pay, well, who up until now pay minimal taxes, although for effective January 2026, those in the formal sector earning less than 800,000 naira will not be paid any taxes. But the thing is that for you to be exempt from taxes, you'd have to be filing a new return. And the challenge for these people is that they will not file, so they will still be captured as being due to pay taxes. So the community leaders and traditional leaders really do have an important role to play in this. Yes, they have an important role to play in this, in encouraging people to pay. Now, for stakeholders generally, what we'll say is how knowledgeable are they of the tax policies? How knowledgeable are they of the tax policies? There are going to be quite some significant changes in tax policies as we go into 2026 with the overhaul of the system. How has this been broken down to stakeholders so that they understand, so that they fully understand what is at stake? How satisfied also are the stakeholders with the services of the agency, even as they experience them? As you know, we all agree that is the extent to which anybody understands the intent of a matter that they can contribute. If stakeholders do not really understand what they're supposed to be doing, they can't contribute. If they don't understand the role the taxes play in their life, in the life of the community, they can't really be expected to contribute effectively. Another thing, so we've spoken about organizations, we've spoken about stakeholders, we've spoken about institutions, and we've spoken about stakeholders. One very important part of an organization, any organization really, are internal processes. Internal processes. Organizations may experience performance gaps for different reasons, and performance gaps are important, and they happen all the time, which is why we're talking about alignments in organizations. And there might be different reasons why there will be performance gaps. For instance, it may be that the structures are outdated. It might be that the job roles are outdated. I'm talking about the reasons for performance gaps. It may be that incentives are misaligned, i.e., the organization may not be rewarding the things that are important to them. And if it is the things that you reward that are going to get promoted, the things that you reward as an organization are the things that are going to be pushed and centered forward in the minds of people. So that's misaligned incentives is important. Then sometimes there are poor workflow processes. Things are just not relating well within one department and another, one unit and another. And this will cause a failure in the organization because the internal processes will be weak. And then sometimes skill matches, that's also important in government agencies. Skill matches is often a problem because we all know that sometimes we don't have full control over the people that we have in our organizations. And this is important, that if you don't have the right people in the right places, they're not going to be able to deliver the goods as they should. So the importance of solid internal processes cannot be underestimated. Generally, an organization is as good and as effective as its internal processes. Even when there's huge financial success in an organization, in this case of Ekiti IRS, if there's huge levels of revenue generation, if there are no strong underlying processes and procedures, the financial performance cannot be sustained. When you look at this in terms of organizations generally, to digress, you look at sometimes the the dot-com companies in, was it the year 2000s and all that, they're huge financial success. Even some stockbroking companies before the crash in Nigeria, I think in 1998, where they're making huge amounts of money, but because they're poorly managed, they're managed by people that are not sufficiently experienced, the internal structures and processes are not strong enough, those performances are not sustained. The importance of solid internal processes cannot be overemphasized. We need to examine all our operation processes. The IRS needs to examine its operational processes. Are they well documented? Are they clearly understood by all staff? We have a thing, a Nigerian thing, when we say generally that, when they get to assignment, we just did what they told us. People start work and they start doing what they need other people doing instead of actually reading policies and procedures, because very often policies and procedures may not be documented or they be fragmented, and this can't work. You have to have your policies and operations procedures well put down, and then they have to be documented in the same place, whether it's on the intranet or whatever, so that anybody that comes, before they even start work on their first day, they spend the first few days reading and understanding the vision of the organization, the mission of the organizations, the policies and procedures that rule the workings of operation. At every level, everybody needs to have that basic performance. So having looked at the essence of institutional performance, we now want to have a look at the institution itself. So I don't know if at this point there are any questions or whether I should take all the questions at the end. Are there any questions, or can I take the questions at the end?
At the end, ma.
Okay, all right. So next slide, please. So realignment is very important to link employee efforts with strategic institutional goals, because the employees are working hard and doing their best. The organization has certain goals. If there's no link between the institutional goals and the organization's working hard, you will have people working hard, but you're not really going to have a significant progress in the direction the management wants to go because there's no link. It's just very important So realignment of staff, you have to, where it is necessary, if you realize that there's a gap in this, then there has to be a change management process. We have to know how to align things properly, and as I'm speaking, I'm sure notes are being taken, whether internally or whatever. So because you, as a management, will have to have an honest look at these things, because sometimes when we want to make a change, we have to have an honest appraisal of where we are now, and organizations are always evolving. Nigeria is a country that continues to evolve. The challenges come in different way, manner, and forms every day. When it comes to January, there will be still different modes and different things anyway. So we have to continue to evolve. We have to continue to look at our processes. We have to continue to look at our organization and just keep moving with the times for best results. So the Ekiti IRS is the main funding arm of the Ekiti state government. So the government is charged with the responsibility of collecting taxes and other revenue. So I read the mission of the IRS to have an understanding of what it is really that the institution does. Of course, I know what an IRS does, but I just wanted to be sure of the particular leaning of this IRS. It says to be a notable revenue institution with professional expertise, working within the law for optimum collection for the development of the state, and to serve the public with quality service and expertise and respect that will ensure maximum cooperation between the public and the Internal Revenue Service. So this is really is a very noble vision. But we all know that translations of vision to reality, is only possible when you have well-equipped and well-trained staff. So the agency must be totally invested in building the capacity of the professionals designated to work in the agency. Because I look at it and it says to be a notable revenue institution, which means your values, everything must be clearly defined, your organization must be well aligned, your internal processes must be in place, as we said, working within the law, because we all know taxation is a law and you have to do all within the ambit of law. Building trust within the people, because to have the law is one thing, but people must be enlightened so they know the law, and then they must be persuaded and really knowledgeable. We must go out aggressively and inform people about what the law is concerning tax. That's another thing that your mission says. It says provision of quality service. I spoke of this earlier, that you have to be in a position to be providing quality service to your stakeholders, as earlier identified. Expertise, which I've mentioned, is possible by a well-trained a workforce where there's emphasis on building capacity. And respect. Respect comes, of course, from the trust. And this is where the community leaders, I mentioned earlier, that is community leaders build trust. They help us to build trust. They build respect, and people are better able to follow. In closed versions, in the smaller states like that, they really have a very important role. So from the information I have, there are 22 tax stations across 15 local governments, as far as I see from the information I have. I'm sure that the adequacy or not of this network will probably be amongst the issues of what you will deliberate at this retreat, because of course the level of effectiveness in a revenue agency depends on your reach to the people. We all talk about technology, and technology is very important, because I was thinking yesterday that but for technology, if this was 7 years ago, I'll probably have to have driven 4.5 hours to Akure, 4.5 hours back to achieve this, just to speak for an hour and a half of a session. But technology does make a lot of things possible. But we also realize that although the use of mobile phones for watching films and sending WhatsApp and joining platform, every person, no matter even the lowly educated people, have that. But in terms of using technology to pay tax and all that, we're not quite there. It's a work in progress. So yes, technology is there and will give you a reach, but you will also know whether there's a need for more outlets in the state to enable you have the reach that you want. And just a bit to speak about outlets, because I also have responsibility for admin, and just to digress, is that I don't know whether you have mini tax stations. We have our major tax stations and we have mini tax stations. So the mini tax stations are really an appeal to the informal sector, and they are placed in places where there's a very large footfall, shopping complexes, especially, and places like that where office blocks are more like shopping for complexes where there's a large footfall, because it's easier for our people if they can reach. And it doesn't always have to be a large tax station with the attendant cost of the staff and generator and all. It can be two shops combined within a shopping complex. There'll be footfall. The people will come there. People don't like to go far. People like to stay within their ambit. So in talking about expansion, that was just a bit of a digression. That might be something that one wants to consider, because it's important that you're readily accessible to everybody, both from the point of enlightenment. When you enlighten people, they have to have a place where they can quickly follow up and ask questions and all that. Because yes, there are chat boxes, there are chat boxes, I'm sure you have, customer service center, I'm sure you have, but a large number of our people still just like to go to places and speak to human beings. So back to even the best ideas will require competent hands to execute them. You require competent hands to execute your vision, because it's one thing to have a vision and a mission, and for the leadership of the agency to be very clear in where they want to go. But the real thing is, how do you have the people that are able to do this? Do you have the people that are able to do this? So the agency must carefully review the officers that they should have in an ideal situation. We know that life is hardly ever an ideal situation, especially in the circumstances in which we operate. But we must make the best of it, and we must make our situations as close to the ideal as possible. So I would like us to look at the broad roles of staff in a revenue agency. And these can be enumerated as follows. The first thing, what are the key things that staff of a revenue agency are required to do? Because that also gives us, still building up to this issue of productivity. And the roles can be, number one, the enumeration of taxpayers. Because if you don't enumerate taxpayers, let me start from the enlightenment of potential taxpayers. People need to be enlightened to know that tax is just not a favor you do the government. Tax is law. Tax is contractual. You have to pay your taxes. In as much as you're earning an income, you're above 18 years old and you're earning an income, you're obliged to pay taxes. It's not something you do when you feel like, or something you do when you require government approval and they've asked you to produce a tax clearance. People need to understand this. So the enumeration of taxpayers is important, again, because once people are enlightened, potential taxpayers are enlightened, you have to translate this enlightenment to enumeration, which is getting them in the tax net, which is enumeration of taxpayers, both those that are for direct assessment, those with small businesses and in the informal sector, even the high net worth individuals. It's all different levels of direct assessment. It's just the category and the volume of taxes they pay that differs, but it's a direct assessment that it would be. You've got to enumerate all those in offices, business offices, places of official structured organizations, where all the individuals, all the staff should be registered taxpayers and paid payee. The second thing that a tax agency needs to be able to do is to have the necessary tools and technology for assessment, and have the necessary process for assessment of personal income tax. It is when you have enlightened potential taxpayers, you have enumerated the taxpayers, and you have assessed the personal income tax of taxpayers, that, of course, the fourth and the most important thing, which is the reason that you are all gathered and I am gathered, is the actual generation of revenue, which is a task of the revenue agency. But bearing in mind that without all these things that we have discussed before, the money is not going to come. Because if you haven't enlightened the taxpayers, if you haven't enumerated them, if you haven't assessed the income, the generation of revenue is not going to happen. So, having identified what are the key roles in key responsibilities of staff in a revenue-generated agency, I'd also want to talk a bit about tax administrators. In IRS, everybody is seen as a tax administrator, because that's really what we all are. We have different roles in the agency, but everybody is considered a tax administrator. In point of fact, the nomenclature of our cadres reflects this. Our first level officers are called revenue supervisors. Then we have senior revenue supervisors. We have revenue officers, and then we have our assistant managers and our revenue managers. But that title is there, and I think it was done in the beginning when the Board of Internal Revenue, when the LIRS was granted full autonomy in 2008, and that was to drive home the fact to the staff, to the state, and to the stakeholders that this is our primary responsibility: generation of revenue and tax administration. So that's just to explain that. So if we all think of ourselves as tax administrators, which we are, we just have different roles. What are now the skills that are important for a tax administrator? And these skills, it's not exhaustive. It's not exhaustive, but these are the key things that I would say. And different responsibilities within the organization will have different aspects they rely on. So the first I would say is strong analytical skills, because you have to have an ability to interpret data and analyze risks, and you have to be able to interpret tax laws and ensure accuracy in application. And of course, this will go to the personal income tax officers, mostly in the taxation, who are the ones that collect the information from taxpayers, who are the ones that need to interpret the data, analyze the risks. You are the ones that be able to interpret tax laws to know the level of the extent to which they can be applied, and also ensure accuracy in application. That's in terms of strong analytical skills. Of course, verbal and non-verbal communication skills are very important, very, very important. There's nowhere in the world that people pay their tax gladly. So even though we know that we have our issues as Nigerians, there's nowhere in the world where people pay tax willingly. And especially in Nigeria of today, in a recession environment, we know that verbal and it's difficult getting money out of people, because people are like, you go out and you hear things like, if they want to close it, they should close it. How much am I making? And they're not going to pay. Or people say to you, oh, what is the government doing for me? I provide my light, I provide my water. Why am I paying tax? But for me, this is where communication comes in. But people need to understand that tax is the law. It's the law of the land expects you to pay tax at these rates if you're earning this income. It's the law of the land. And it's a social contract. And when people say to me, yes, it's a social contract, but government is not doing its part, I say, well, I'm sure in Ekiti State, as in Lagos, there are many things to show what the government is doing with taxpayers' money. So first of all, I point to that how about the roads? How about the lights? How about the public schools? How about the public hospitals? That's taxpayers' money in action. But at any rate, even if it's not, you do the right thing. Because if you don't do the right thing by paying your portion of tax, you have no business complaining about the government not doing this or not doing that. So trying to communicate all these things to people at a time like this, when business is tough, it's not easy, and you really need to be able to communicate verbally. And especially for our younger officers who haven't worked, sometimes who haven't worked in formal environments before, sometimes you'll be surprised at the way they pass on information or communicate. But really, it's just a lack of exposure. So it's something that has to be taught, that this is the way you relate to people in this instance and that instance. Another attribute that's important are problem-solving skills. These are strongly related to an analytical mindset. People need to be able to solve problems. And this is something I find a bit of a challenge, and we spent a lot of time training in our agency, because you find that people may identify a problem, but they're waiting for someone to come and give them a solution, even up to mid-level, waiting for someone to give them a solution. And this shouldn't be the case at all, that people should be able to identify problems. Yes, because of the limited inflexibility in government work, the person that identifies the problem may not be able to solve it, but you must be able to know the problem and escalate it to an appropriate officer or supervisor so that the change can be effective. So this problem-solving skills is important for tax administrators. Tax administrators also have to have a sound knowledge of tax laws in a fast-changing environment, because there are so many things are happening, these things are evolving, and even as we go into this new tax regime, I have a feeling that some things may still be twisted and turned here and there, because as things come into practice, there might be need to change. So we just have to be adaptable. We have to be adaptable. And in an organization in the year 2025, when so much of what happens within your organization in Ekiti State is happened by things that happen in other parts of Nigeria, not even only Nigeria, other parts of the world. The most important office skill for a tax administrator at any level, but particularly for people at management and supervisory levels, is the skill of adaptability. You must be able to look into a situation and lean on it, quickly make the necessary adjustments, and of course, strong organizational skills. So you find that tax administrators are people who are frequently comfortable with numbers. It's important to note that while some people are naturally comfortable with numbers, it's a skill that can be learned because it's a useful skill. We all learn, and as I keep saying, we evolve in our roles, we evolve in our jobs. So why am I taking time to talk about all these things about the organization, the structure of an organization, the staffing of an organization, the stakeholders, and now onto the administrator of tax administrators? Is like I'm building up to say that if you don't have the organization in the right way, and you don't have the staff in the right way, the right mindset, everybody aligned, productivity will not happen, and alignment is unlikely. So that is why I'm just to explain again why I'm taking this in this mode. Another thing, of course, that's important for staff is time management and organization, personal effectiveness. Staff must be able to prioritize tasks and meet deadlines. Mid-level officers, assistant managers, managers, they must be able to work without close supervision. They must be able to say, go take this one, go to this local government, go and do an enlightenment, go and do this. Go and talk to this, the Ekiti State arm of the Nigerian Bar Association. We all know that lawyers can be notoriously difficult when it comes to paying taxes. So go and talk to the Nigerian Medical Association. Go and talk to the ASU and all that. So they must be able to move around because, as I said, technology is very good. Technology is important. But in the circumstance in which we find ourselves, we still have to be able to engage physically. And again, time management and organization and that ability to work independently is still very important in an agency where the structures are still evolving. And even agencies that have been around for a lot longer, the structures are evolving. So I'm sure that in Ekiti State, our structures are still evolving and they will continue to evolve and make the changes as we go along. Another thing that's very important, and this comes from the top, is tax administration, integrity, and ethics are key. Honesty and transparency must be emphasized to staff and modeled in the leadership of the agency. And there will always be potential taxpayers willing to negotiate. You'll always have taxpayers that are ready to pay and will say, oh, I'll give you 200,000, and I'll pay 200,000. That's always going to happen. There will always be offers. So it is us as an organization that we have to keep telling our staff, and we have to display it as management. And they also must see that if you fall out of line, the sanctions are going to be they're going to be strong. So they know that it's simply not worth the trouble. Because if you are training, if you are putting your processes in place, strengthening your organization, training your staff, have all the rules done correctly, everybody is supposed to do this, and you have worked it out, who is going to do what impact is it going to have, and then the money is leaking because people are giving half the money to themselves and half the money, it's not going to work. So those are all the things that must be looked at. Yes. Next slide, please. I've spoken about adaptability. Adaptability continues to be something that's very important in a fast-changing world and a continuously evolving financial and tax landscape. Officers must be adaptable. I think that in Nigeria of today, if I was asked what is the most important aspect or attribute, I'd say adaptability, because things just keep changing so fast. So knowledge is there. Knowledge is very important. You have all the necessary knowledge, but you must be able to adapt when the knowledge that you have is facing a different circumstance. You must be able to keep the principles and yet adapt to the new situation. So we must have it such that the staff of the agency are able to keep up with evolving laws, with technology and changes. You might want to have learning sessions, for instance. You might have learning, I forget what this is, group sessions, maybe once a month, grouping in directories, grouping in units, where people can just share knowledge or people can share ideas on what's topical in taxation as it applies. And I think that in the new year, with the new rules, everybody's going to have to be talking and looking much closer at this anyway. So taking an interest in technology is desirable and is very beneficial. So yes, that's said. So now we're getting into productivity, which is what we want to really talk about, and it's very important. Staff alignment, as I said, that until some things are in place, productivity can't really happen. So, before we get into the specifics of the Ekiti IRS, and as I said, well, I believe that you are making notes. It's a management retreat, and these will just set lines of discussion. It will bring up lines of discussion because you will know the things that are particular to your organization. But we say that before we get to the specifics of your Ekiti IRS, which we'll be looking at, we know that there are standard and almost traditional ways of improving staff productivity. And of course, the first and the most obvious thing is goal setting. Goal setting is one of the easiest ways, the first and the primary ways that everybody looks to measure productivity. And of course, as we all know what SMART goals are, the goals must be specific, they must be measurable, they must be achievable, realistic, and timely. SMART goals. Another thing to do as an organization to improve productivity is to provide training and capacity development opportunities. This is very important. I said earlier that it is staff that know what to do, that can do that. You can have a beautiful vision and a beautiful mission, but if your staff are not trained and exposed as to what is expected, what they need to do, and how they need to do it, I'm afraid these things are not going to be of much significance. So another thing is to create a positive work environment to the best of the ability of the management. A work environment where people are happy to come to work 5 days a week is a great plus for productivity, because when people are in a negative environment or a toxic environment, they're not just going to be able to do their best. Improved communication. I spoke about communication earlier and the importance of communication, even as it relates to taxpayers. But communication, even within the office, is very, very important. Another thing will be the provision of work tools and equipment to make work easy. This is really very important. Provision of work tools and equipment to make work easy. Then we spoke about streamlining of communication as much as possible and limit unnecessary meetings. We've spoken here about promoting work-life balance among staff and preventing burnout. Spoken about employee growth and well-being. Build staff capacity professionally and personally, so you can take advantage of the opportunities at the workplace. And then another one is that providing feedback for staff that will enable them meet targets set for achievements and relate well with their staff. Yes. Please continue. Another thing that we must do is that we must promote the physical and health and wellness of staff. For younger staff, it's very important to them, Gen Zs and millennials. Physical and health awareness, wellness is very fair. That, for Gen Z and millennials, all know that they like flexibility. And this may not always say objectives, but the Gen Zs and millennials, they do bring a circle value to the organization, and that's just the truth. They're flexible, they're open-minded, they're bolder. These are things that are important. So, exceptional, outside of the norm. Okay. So about mental health is very important to people. That Okay. Yes, I think. Did you hear what did you hear last, please? Did you hear about promoting physical health and wellness?
There was a little glitch. You can just come back.
Okay, so I spoke about the importance of promoting physical health and wellness of staff. And I did say that this is a very important for younger staff, Gen Zs and millennials, that while it's acknowledged that the quest for flexibility may not always align with corporate objectives, then there's a value that Gen Zs and millennials bring to an organization, even from their own flexibility. Those things are important. And again, there's sometimes a need to reward exceptional and high-performing employees outside of the normal appraisal process. Yes, please continue. Productivity. Productivity must always be measurable. Productivity must always be measurable. Its essence must be clearly defined. So for the Ekiti IRS, what does productivity look like? What does it mean within your organization? If you look at it, that what were productivity levels at the lowest and highest points of performance? So how productive was staff of the organization, for instance, at the time when you made significant revenue levels? And what was productivity at the time when you made the lowest levels? Another thing was that does your annual appraisal for measure elements of productivity? These are all questions that our human resources needs to consider. And the important questions for human resources. So identify the behaviors you believe are the things that had a positive impact. Okay. I'm no longer visible on the screen. So can I, okay. I'm not sure my video is working. Please, can you confirm if you can see me on the video?
We can see.
Okay, you can see me on the video. So, but we're talking about productivity, and it's just to say that productivity just doesn't happen. It's productive people that make a productive organization. Productivity doesn't just happen. It's intentional, it's crafted, and somebody has worked very hard to make their staff productive. So it's important to identify what is most important in your organization and push the things that are most important. It's important to ensure that people bring their whole selves to work, i.e., they come to work committed and ready to do whatever it needs to be done to move the organization forward. They know their own role in it, and they're ready to do it and push forward. People must be made to feel secure in their employment, and they must be made to feel valued. So, and then again, their productivity, there are elements that we use to measure productivity. And those elements that we use to measure productivity in an organization must remain consistent over time. There's so many things that weren't important in the African experience before, but in the global world of today, they are important. This thing of people bringing their whole selves to work. People want to feel valued. People feel secure in their employment. These things that were, as Africans, weren't really bothered with, but they're very important now. They're very important now, and we must be mindful of them. So the key components of staff productivity realignment are workforce planning, role designs, optimal staffing levels, and competency mapping. Okay, so workforce planning, let's look at the staff at different levels. Let's look at the staff at different levels. Let's look at what it is. We've spoken about setting SMART goals. We've spoken about, okay, here we are. We've spoken about the key components of staff productivity alignment. We've spoken about workforce planning. Got to look at the promotions and the career tracks of people. Got to look at the roles, such as the work. We know what the work is, but what are the roles of designated staff? You also want to make sure that your staffing levels are optimal, that we have optimal staffing levels. We don't have too many and we don't have too few. And then, of course, we look at the different competencies within the organization. Competency mapping is something that we have touched on but not looked at in a lot of depth, and something that there's always so much more to learn on competency mapping. Yes. The next slide, please. So, at IRS, we're very intentional in setting SMART goals. We try our best to do this in all the different directorates and in the Lagos state. So we set SMART goals, then there are KPIs for everything, that the KPIs are connected to every institutional objective. Now, what is the KPI that is connected to any given institutional objective? We talk about capacity building and training. IRS, we're very intentional about building capacity for our staff. Training curriculum each year is developed based on requirements identified by supervisors and noted on appraisal forms every year. So we look at the appraisal forms, points are highlighted, and these form a part of our training. Areas that are of topical interest are things that are identified as Chartered Institute of Taxation. And a lot of these things are the taxing training, these training materials are part of the things that we use in developing the tax administrators. The organization, LIRS, we run over 90 sessions, 90 training sessions, different modules in a given year. So capacity building is a very important part of the work that we do. Yes. So, and of course, we do our training in groups. So we have groups, our first level officers, level 8, which in government parlance. We have our junior officers. So we take the revenue supervisors and the supervisors, senior revenue supervisors. We take them together. And we tend to take people in groups, depending on their cadre, so that the people that have, maybe an agency for between 3-5 years, their first level officers, they're likely to be in the same cadre. You take them together because they're learning the same things. As the officers become assistant revenue managers, level 14, level 15, you take everything together, you take them all in their groups, and you encourage the payments of bonuses based on that. Yes. Development, staff development, there are two sides to staff development. There's the tax issues and there's the soft skills. So as we're training on technical tax issues, we're also training on soft skills. So our training sessions in the last, 2-3 years, which, as I said, we have on average 90 sessions. We have 3 days. They're just 3 days sessions during the week, so that they're short and impactful. We have on average 90. And some of the skills that we've taken, we take tax skills and tax topics as well as soft skills, because you must know the tax topics as a tax administrator, but you must have the soft skills so that you know how to apply the technical skills that you have. You have to know how to apply them. And we talk about wisdom. The wisdom is the application of knowledge. It's the same way. You have the knowledge on tax, but you must have the wisdom to execute. You must have the wisdom to relate, the wisdom to communicate, the wisdom to coach, the wisdom to mentor, and all these things, the wisdom to know how to be financially effective. Those ones are there. So, of course, there are trainings on direct assessment, on topical issues in personal income tax, on the essentials of tax audit and resolution of issues in audit and investigation. These are all things that are there. And of course, as I said, we train people in cadres and they're different modules. So sometimes we'll have a team lead. So we're training team leads. At other times, we're training team members, so that everybody has a holistic view. And the thing about training cadres is that we'll have it a way that, okay, if you're a first level officer, revenue supervisor, you've been in the agency for 4 years, you'd have undergone these level of trainings. You've been in the agency, if you're a senior revenue supervisor, you've been in the agency for like 6-7 years, you'd have gone these level of trainings on tax issues and non-tax issues, and so on and so forth. We take it like that. So really, by the time you have gotten to a certain level, by the time you're an assistant manager in the agency, there are so many certain things that we should be able to take for granted that you have the knowledge, because you'd have trained up to that point. And then when we get up to a revenue manager level, we start getting a bit more specific. But because we just want to have a better trained workforce, that was what we started 10 years ago. We have been consistent to make sure that you raise the level, because when you want to raise the level of something in entirety, you have to train the people in the group. So you raise the level so that any given staff of LRS, there's certain things that any staff of LRS should know. There's certain things that the junior officers will know. There's certain things that the middle managers will know. Yes, not everybody is going to be on board, but my view is always that if you have 7 of 10 people on board, In university, 70% they 2-1, and that's good enough for you to go with. Yes. So I've spoken about the importance of having the technical skills and the soft skills. And again, just to emphasize that our knowledge, our experience has been that a successful application of these principles lead to motivated staff and increased productivity and ultimately a higher revenue. So these are the things that I've put together, that I think that looking at the topic that I've been given and the things that I believe are relevant in an evolving agency, because we're all evolving. Even IRS, that was the operational arm of the Board of Internal Revenue since 2008. This is now 2025. We're all evolving. In the last year or so, we just constantly have to keep things there. Yes, tax is law and law is tax. So there are many things that you have to stay within the ambits of the law, but the approach of your enlightenment, the approach of your enumeration, the approach of your communication type, there's a need to keep revising this in line with what the economy is saying, what is topical, what the laws are saying, and all that. So on this note, I'd like to thank you very much again for inviting me, and I do hope that I've been able to share things that have been useful to the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma. We will take a few comments.
Sorry, I don't know whether there are any questions.
Please let her confirm if she can hear us.
Okay, can you hear me?
I couldn't hear the question, but I could hear you when you spoke just now. But I couldn't hear the.
Okay. Okay.
The speaker is quite muffled. I can't hear. I could hear the first gentleman who said, let's confirm if they can hear me. I could hear you very clearly, but I can't hear the speaker.
Okay, she can hear me.
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for this very loaded discussion. My question is just, you emphasize on taxpayer enlightenment. We know what enlightenment means, but we want to gain from the experience of the IRS. How are you doing it? Because if I enlighten the Russian, if I enlighten the world. So we want to gain from your process. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we have what we call our Directorate of Informal and Special Duties, and they have tax enlightenment teams. Of course, tax enlightenment goes on in all the stations. We have 40 tax stations and 38 mini tax stations, which I described. We have 40 tax stations. So enlightenment, as a matter of group, every week. They go out. Our staff in the tax stations, they go out. They go out and they go around. We have our buses, they go in groups and they go out in groups and they go out and talk to people and share and, talk to people, engage about the importance of taxation and all that. And they go around with their localities. We have clearly defined localities where everybody operates and people go out in their localities. We now have a tax enlightenment team. We have a tax education and enlightenment team situated under our Directorate of Informal Sector Directorate, which is in the head office, which goes out and then does enlightenment to groups. So sometimes you get invited to professional groups to speak at associations and all that. Sometimes people go and speak at resident associations. Sometimes you just get invited to speak at professional groups and all that. With this new tax laws, there's been a really heightened interest, and we've been getting a lot of invitations to speak. So that one is there. But the ones that we do on a continuous basis is that the people go out on designated days and enlighten and enumerate within the environment. That's one. Then another group goes out and speaks to organizations and associations. We engage with the market people, and market people, you talk to the market leaders. So you go to the head of the markets, the Babaloja, the Yaloja, which is why I said you need to get the community leaders on board, because they are the ones, and in a market, as I learned, when I got to IRS, I realized that the markets in the Southwest, at least what I've seen, really very highly organized, and is what the leader says that everybody does. So you have to get the buy-in of the leader. So you talk to the leaders of these market associations and all that. It makes things a lot easier. So but the enlightenment and all that, it always starts from within. Because when our people are not enlightened, they can't enlighten that. You can't give what you don't have. So we have to constantly keep putting the information out there on the internet, because sometimes people just simply won't read. They have to know that. And in our training sessions, I said we do have an average of 90 training sessions a year. As often as I can, I open these training sessions. That's a level of commitment on a weekly basis. I open these training sessions all the time, as much as I can, as much as I'm available, because it just shows, number one, it lets staff understand how important it is to us as an organization in building this capacity. And it's also an opportunity to share with staff and tell them that, look, these things are important. You have to project us well. As I keep saying, that yes, we have management receipts, we have leaders in the organization, but our field staff, the people on the shop floor, station managers or branch heads or however they're designated in your organizations, that they are the ones that people really know. They're the ones that people know and the ones that people see. So that's how we do it, and we've been successful. And okay, we also have there's a tax talk. It's a program that we sponsor, and we do a lot of these things on television and radio. And a lot of people still listen to the radio. We have our senior officers going on the radio, taking topical issues at the time of filing of annual returns. We have radio talks, we have television talks, to just get people to understand what's really key. I hope that answers your question.
All right. Thank you very much. In the course of your presentation, you did mention the fact that productivity must be measurable. That I agree with that. And the one of the means of measuring productivity is appraisal. But my observation on that is that appraisal is not actually supposed to be limited to a superior officer appraising a subordinate. Appraisal has to be developed in such a way that it's going to be like a 360 degree. Therefore, that way, all the directorates or departments can, appraise one another. Like if I have a task to deliver and I know the directorate or the department that awarded that to me, they have a means of measuring my performance. Definitely, I will be on my toes and I will be better for it when I'm studying that. And then, even there's supposed to be a way that other staff are able to appraise their senior colleagues. Maybe the staff within the department appraising their HOD or HOD appraising director. Even though this was nothing, appraisal will not be done for the director or chairman, but at least if HOD is appraising chairman or appraising the director, let that superior officer know that at least he or she is doing well in this capacity, he or she is not doing well in this other. So an appraisal has to be extended to the all encompassing. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, yes. Now, the thing about it is that there are some situations that are ideal to be done, but, and I choose my words carefully here, but they're not always practical. For me, I believe in streamlining of processes. What you have said is very valid, that everybody needs to know how they're doing. But what is also very important is that your process is streamlined. And if you are doing too many things at a time, it's not likely to be a streamlined process. So the traditional appraisal, first, the most important traditional appraisal is that the appraisal of the supervised by supervisor. That is very important. And in as much as you have a supervisor appraising his team, the things that are being appraised must be very clear. Sometimes people are not even clear of what exactly the expectation is. So I would say that the first step is to ensure that everybody has their key performance indicators. So everybody knows what exactly they're supposed to be doing. So at the beginning of the year, the appraisal period, nobody is surprised. For instance, when we're appraising people for December 31st now, nobody is going to be surprised that they're being rated on anything because they know exactly what they're being rated on. And different time in the course of the year, it is good for them to be reminded so that they stay the course. So that is one. The appraiser of the supervised by the supervisor, that's very important. And of course, that's at different levels, because if you have levels of appraisal, for instance, you have an officer and then there's a station manager, and for argument purposes, such as we organize a regional coordinator, there'll be two levels of appraisal. So that a staff, for instance, gets appraised by a station manager and a regional coordinator, so that nobody can really victimize everybody. So yes, it may not be like cross as you're saying, but there's an event, because if the supervised at the lowest level are being supervised by their manager is also being supervised by a regional manager, who is also being supervised by their director. So I think what is important is to even first make sure that that is working correctly. That is working correctly and people are being appraised correctly. And then this issue of interdepartmental appraisals and all that, because they're your customers. Legal is a customer of accounts. Accounts is a customer of HR and so on. It might be useful, but that will be, I think, outside of the individual appraisal process. That may be a departmental appraisal or something that you want to do, and then you'll have select people appraiser, because if you have too many different things that you're running at the same time, it might not be very effective. But it's good. Maybe as a management team, maybe then there can be appraisers. Okay, HR, these are your parameters. Accounts, these are your parameters. Legal, these are your parameters. PIT, these are your parameters. And then the managers appraise each other, and there's cross things, discussions at a meeting. So you can now, together at this meeting, at the management level, come together that what are the things that we're going to look at. That could be useful. But I would encourage that, first of all, we make sure that that line reporting is properly done. I know the challenge we have with appraisal is a Nigerian thing. People are often very reluctant to see people are, so you have to be very granular in your appraisal, and you have to leave as little as possible to subjectivity, because people are very reluctant generally to find out. And I had to institute a place where people will come to me and complain about the staff, and then the staff appraisal will come and the staff will get rating 1, rating 2. And I said, no, I'm not going to accept it. So what I said there is that if you complain about a staff and you want that staff to be redeployed, you have to put it in writing. If you don't put it in writing, that staff is going to stay there and you'll continue to manage that staff, because sometimes it's convenient to people say, HR gave you. I said, nobody gives anybody an appraisal. The appraisal is what your supervisor gives you. So you have to, as much as possible, to force people to evaluate correctly, because people have a problem with evaluating objectively. And I suspect that will be the issue there, because it's a Nigerian thing, it's a Yoruba thing. It's not about, it's not, we're not as clinical as the foreigners are. So we have to put as many things so that it's as strict as possible. You have to let people know that if you appraise a bad staff well, it's an appraisal issue for you yourself, because your supervisor is going to, appraise you, and then put as much as possible elements that can be measured. Some elements cannot be measured, but as much as possible, let's put elements that can be measured. And honestly, the importance of very shortly after I joined the agency, we had an exercise where we had, in reviewing our performance appraisal process from what it was then to what it is now, we had KPIs for every single role in the agency. So in a station, for instance, there's a station head, there's a head of admin, there's a direct assessment head, there's an employment. Every single person has a role, and every role has expectations 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That these are the things they're supposed to be doing. Because sometimes in the busyness of work, people really forget what they're supposed to be doing, and they wander this way and they wander that way. And then we wonder, why are things not getting done? Why is it not being productive? It's because people haven't been doing what they were asked to do. And people have initially set out very clear parameters that these are the things we need to do to be productive. But you just find somebody wandering in another direction. And if you're not very focused and keep drawing people back, people have a tendency to wander, which is why at retreats like this is very good, because you can really look at it that this is what we said we were going to do in January. How far have we drifted from the goal? Okay, these people we have asked to do this, have we written down what they're supposed to do? Have they documented it points 1 to point 10? This is your primary assignment. You know, some people are very good at majoring on the minor and minoring on the major. You have to keep setting them straight. You have to define it, that we should not allow people cannot be productive except to tell them exactly what we want them to do. We should not allow, it's good to allow initiative, but I find that in our environment, the initiative may not be too much. The initiative may be only initiative shown around what has already been established by the leadership, that this is what you must pursue. Otherwise, your staff will pursue what they are interested in, and they will pursue what is convenient for them. And what they are interested in and what is convenient for them may not necessarily be what is going to be productive and get you to where you're going. So I hope that answers the question. So yes, by all means, evaluate across departments, but that probably will be at the leadership levels so that you can take it at a session such as this and say, look, you're not doing this, you've got to do this. You're not doing this, you've got to do this. Okay, let's look at your parameters, your KPIs as the head of legal, drop some, add some. The head of accounts, drop some, add some. But for the generality of your staff, just let your appraisal process be as clear as possible and streamlined as possible, because I find that there's nothing that brings effectiveness up to clarity, more than clarity. And another thing I notice is that sometimes people will have appraisals, people will score their friends and anybody they don't want to upset them, score them rating 1. So I instituted something. I said, okay, if you score somebody rating 1, you can't score somebody rating 1 in an environment where the station is scoring rating 3. But I said, okay, let's even take this person as an exceptional worker. Anybody that is scored rating 1, you must give me a written explanation of why they've been scored rating 1. Then, of course, that dropped because people didn't want to have to qualify, or people didn't have anything to say to qualify them. They were just their friends and they wanted to give them good scores. And this is our reality. So, you know, it's always very important that when you're having sessions like this, there's the situations, what we want, what is ideal, but it is when we know and acknowledge what is our reality and look at the ideals, look at our reality, and take as much of as the ideals as we can domesticate and compel that to be our reality. Then we'll be productive. When we do that, then our staff will be productive. Then our organization will be aligned with the goals you have set up. Then we'll have more revenue and we'll be able to do what the government would like us to do. Thank you.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
How do we compensate departments that don't directly generate revenue? I think the cost centers like HR, how do we compensate them?
If I heard you correctly, you said, how do we compensate the areas that don't directly generate revenue? And that's something because and that's always an important thing, because there are areas that don't generate revenue but are very important. I spoke at the beginning about the importance of internal processes. So we have internal audit. We have an accounts department that has a process. We have HR that puts all our staff in line and ensure things are done properly. We have admin that provides all the back office support systems and ensures that the systems are correct and everything is running correctly. So like I said, they may not, for the revenue generating areas, it's very easy. This is your target, how much do you need? But if you have a situation where every role in your agency is defined and every person in HR, for instance, they have their own definition of their roles, their appraisal, in the personal performance appraisal, it may not say HR, did you, how many leave appraisals did you do? And it may not be that granular, but it will relate to your work. So that one, you have to make it relate as closely to the work as possible, like efficiency in turnaround time on processing of documents, frequency of visitation of stations, turnaround time in repair of motor vehicles for admin, for instance, frequency or length of downtime of electrical equipment. Detailed things like that for an admin. For an HR, it will be something specific, turnaround, whatever, of welfare issues of staff, specific as possible. Because honestly, there's nothing like specificity to help to drive thoughts, because when you're very specific, people know exactly what they're going to do. So for I would advise that for your admin, for your HR, for your accounts, for your legal, for your non-performance, for non-financial, you must identify 1 to 10. What exactly are they supposed to be doing? And identify it's not in that, does the person have a good attitude or not? No, those are very subjective. The day that if the appraiser, if you are rude to the appraiser on that day, they will give you a 0 appraisal. But the thing is that somebody that has been, or you've just had a bad day and done something, you get 0. Avoid subjective things. Take the things that you can pinpoint. How fast are they in processing leave? How fast are they in reaching out to them? How effective are the training programs? How good is the feedback of, so you would have to be very specific and not make the things too many. Maybe 8 points, not make the things too many. And of course, there are general things that apply to everybody, attendance, team membership, but those things that are general things, they should not carry too much weight. The things that should carry weight will be the specifics of the job. Those are the things that should carry weight. So the first thing, if you have not done so already, is to have, you're not going to say, oh, HR leave person has a different appraisal from performance, from workforce planning, but there will be performance appraisals that are fairly specific to their roles, so that everybody within the direction, yes, everybody has general parameters by virtue of the fact that you're a staff of the agency, and then you have other points that are general, but also fairly specific to your role. And for instance, if you decide that people are being evaluated on 10 parameters, and you have 3 parameters are general, such as reliability, attendance and punctuality. Another one must be team playing, and another one has 3. The remaining 7 must be work specific. And I mentioned earlier that somewhere that we are measuring productivity, you must measure on the same matrix, just at the same thing as performance. You must measure on the same part. So if you are appraising admin with 10 points, 3 are general to everybody just by virtue of being staff of Ekiti agency, 7 are specific to your directorate sort of. The same 10 is what you must have in everywhere. We must have uniform parameters. It's the same 3 that are general by virtue of the fact that you're a staff. The remaining 7 are, like that. So I hope that helps. You must be specific. I can't emphasize it enough. You must be specific. And there's just something about us as a people. If you're not very specific, people will wander this way, they will wander that way. They'll do everything except what you've asked them to do. And then you'll wonder, why are people working from 8 to 5? Why am I working so hard and doing all these papers and it's not showing? It's simply because people are doing the wrong thing. I talked about a misalignment of objectives. People are focusing on the minors. They're focusing on things that are not going to affect your productivity and not going to take you where you're going. So as a leader, as a supervisor, you have to keep veering people back. You have to keep veering people back. Otherwise, they'll just do what they want. That's just human nature. They just do what sits well. Okay. Sorry, I can't hear you. I didn't hear that question.
How do we encourage work-life balance from the top?
How do you encourage work-life balance from the top? Well, I am very strong on work-life balance. I think because all my career, before I joined the public service, where I've now been for 10 years, I had a 25-year career in the bank. And I've always believed that there's work-life balance. But, as a senior friend of mine, Mr. Bukwa Oshika, who I'm sure you've all heard of, always says that sometimes the work-life balance, you will not balance work, there will not be a work-life balance every day. Sometimes you would have to choose what is more important. Sometimes it will be the work because there's a deadline, because there's a retreat. I'm sure the people on the local organizing committee have worked long to be able to get all this technology and get everything sorted out. They would have worked long, but then it will go back to normal. But it goes back to streamlining and specificity. People must know what their responsibilities are. People must be compelled to do what is their job. And then people must also do their work within working hours. Because, we must be very honest about our people. If you don't compel people, they will do other things. Some people will run a shop. And we know now, Nigeria, the economy is not smiling. The economy is not smiling. So a lot of people have what they call their side hustles. People need multiple streams of income. If you don't give your people very specific roles and make very specific requirements, they'll be using your time to run their side hustle. Now, we all know that in the government, the rule book says you can only work with the agency, all your work must be for government. Yes, and we agree that that is the ideal. But I say, as I said earlier, we must look at what is ideal and what is our reality. But at the same time, we cannot allow people to be doing their hustles on official time. And that means that for the managers, for the management team, there's a task because people will take their cue from you. If the manager of the station or the head of the department comes in at 10, nobody's going to come in. Then everybody will come in at 9:45. But if they know that you're going to be there at 8 or at 8:15, everybody is going to be there before you. So the importance of the leadership setting the tone, it cannot be overemphasized. And you cannot get from people what you do not give yourself. If they know that you're going to be there, they'll be there before you. But if they know that then you're not going to be there, they're not going to be there. If they know that you are running your business and your staff come and report to you to take instructions, they're going to do the same thing. And people must agree, especially the working women. The men, they don't really have, because traditionally and typically, women have the responsibility. Those that are married and have responsibility. But even those that aren't married, some may not be married and have children. Some may be caring for elderly relatives and all that. So they have commitments outside work. But people must understand and be made to understand that, look, we understand these commitments, but you have a job to do. You have a job to do. So my own thing is that people must be compelled to come in time and close in time. I don't believe in people just hanging around till 7 p.m. if you have finished your work. As I always say to myself, I know government workers typically 5 on the dot, everybody's going. I said, no problem. I have no problem with that. But while you are here, you must be engaged and you must do what you're supposed to do. And if you haven't identified what are they supposed to do weekly, which reports are you to generate, by which day, by what time, monthly, which reports are you supposed to generate, by which day, by what time. If you don't do all these things, you will not get them. And people must understand. And I always say to people that, look, it's a free thing, especially for women, even when the young women, because all the 3 children I had while I was at work. I said, as a woman, you must realize that if you have opted for a career, if you have opted to work outside of your home, you are not going to have the level of flexibility and latitude that your friend or sister who runs her own business is going to have. And that's a reality. And people must be made to accept that. But the benefit of what you have the fulfillment of a career, and you have the benefit of a regular income. At the end of every month, you get a salary. It's a trade. So people must understand that there's a trade-in. You can't have everything. It just doesn't work like that. So please, that is what's one thing that we must emphasize to staff, that this work-life thing is a balance. It's a balance. You're not going to have it all at once. That's the truth. Yes. Any other questions? Any other questions?
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Any further questions?
connection is very, very important for our job. We need to know who, when, and what. I want to ask you, what can we do to have a quality data that can be helpful for our job?
Well, quality data are very important because a lot of decisions are taken based on the data available. But I know that we had in the agency one time when we had to do the data cleansing exercise because we had duplicated records that were different things. And sometimes one just has to have a data cleansing exercise, subject the data to interrogation, and have cleaner data. It's a continuous, I think that's a continuous process, really. It's a continuous process. And we can start building up the data from now. That if you look at the data you had, maybe in respect of taxpayers, there's a lot of duplication, there's information there, there's what they call dirty data, but you can always have a cutoff. And this is a good time. We're going into a new year, we're going into new rules. This is a good time to select data and to start to rebuild the data that we'll use. And we have to also let our data start speaking to us, information that we need to interrogate and all that. So it's just a continuous thing, really. It's just a continuous thing. But I think the first thing will be to, even as you look at the work, what sort of data do you require? What sort of decisions are you taking? One, and then what data do you require? Two, is this data available to you? Three, those are the things that we have.
This was a bit fun. How do we motivate them without time before?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question. I could hear the primary speaker, but I can't really hear anybody else.
Wait, one else. The question is, how can we motivate the staff without spending a kobo?
That's not easy. Motivating staff, that's when for number one, staff that are well motivated must be well paid. And it's difficult. It's difficult to pay staff well, but you must pay staff regularly. I must keep them motivated. And then there are non-monetary rewards, like having the staff of the month. That's something we've spoken a lot about in the agency, but it's not something we've really done. So having the staff of the month, having the staff of the year, those things are beneficial. There was a time we spoke of we tried to do like a dinner with the chairman, but it turned out that many people were too nervous to eat, so that didn't work. So we dropped that. We thought it would be a night, an evening out with the chairman would be something people would enjoy. They'd be able to engage the leadership and all that. But people were too nervous, that didn't work. So I think this idea of staff of the year or staff of the month or branch of the year, and all those sort of things, those non-monetary awards are important to people and they help. So that's something we haven't really done a lot of, but it's something that I will look at and I'm looking at so that we can do more of in the 2026.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think I've taken as many questions. I hope it's been useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam. For your time. We have
Sorry, I can't hear. I can't really hear.
Can you hear me?
I can hear now. Yes, maybe if you just stay in one location. Yes.
All right. I said we appreciate you for paperwork delivered for the feedback for question and answer. And I'm saying we may have to one or two of our HR people to come to you again because we are letting more experience people and then you are perhaps give us metropolitan, perhaps we can give more insight. For example, in the area of performance reward, it would be very important. And I'm really happy that you mentioned the officer and the fact that people is sincere in their appraisal. Because the first time I saw a officer, everybody was just already 1999. I said, if everybody is always 90 days, where are we going to? And then do so as being said or too difficult, but I'm happy that you have also mentioned it today. So the discussions will continue now. I will appreciate you. Thank you for your time. God bless you. We'll still call on you again and again. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you.
I just heard something, an appraisal, and I heard the thank you. The rest of it was very muffled. But, but if there are any other things, you could always please send me an email and I can, maybe I can respond. I can't really hear. I heard the thank you and I heard appraisal, that you're glad I mentioned appraisal, but I didn't hear anything else.
Hello, ma. Can you hear me better now?
I can hear you clearly now. Yes, I can hear.
Okay. I will, number one, we try to appreciate you for the job well done. And I also suggested that possibly in the nearest future, we'll ask 2 of our HR team members to come around and then see the way you work and then learn a lot. Of course, we'll write the chairman as we did the other time.
Okay.
Just appreciate you, man.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
That will be our pleasure. You're welcome.
Okay, man. All right. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Okay. Thank you very much. So thank you so much, and I've enjoyed the time spent with you, and I look forward to interacting with your HR staff. We have people coming to the agency from all over the country, all the IRSs, and it's always nice to learn. There's always something to take away from both sides, so I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Thank you, man.
Okay, so I can exit now. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your retreat. Thank you. Bye-bye.